Ciao Seb, can you hear me very well?
Ciao Gianni, come stai?
Ciao, very, very well, thank you. So we are very glad to have here with us. So we are on the last leg, no? Because after 7 days, everybody's a little bit tired, but we have to sprint now. And we begin with you, this sprint. You know, one of the candidates has told
I was a middle distance runner, Gianni.
I know.
It wasn't always familiar territory for me, but I'll give it the best shot I can.
Yes, and the funny thing is one of the candidates told us that he was influencing his direction to come to the IOC and to be part of the IOC by seeing Carl Lewis in 1984 in Los Angeles. But I think that he has also to see you, because there you were a fantastic champion. The second time you were gold medal and so on, something special. But what?
But Gianni, wait, I think Gianni, if I may just divert for a few moments, you won't be surprised. You can take the man out of athletics. You'll never take athletics out of the man. And I'm actually watching the European indoor athletics championships at the moment. But Carl Lewis was magnificent in 1984. I'm not surprised that he inspired a whole generation of people to take up the sport. You know, I had my role models going back many years who inspired me to take up the sport. So we know the impact athletes have, and that's why it's so important we remain an athlete-focused organization. And
who has convinced you to run for this special race to become president of the IOC? What happened? When you enter into this mind?
No one person. Of course, it was only really on the last day in Paris that any of us knew there would be that opportunity. And when you're the federation president of the central sport at an Olympic Games, you tend to be focusing on everything related to the delivery of your sport. Delivery is something I've done throughout my whole life. So being in Paris, I was helping deliver a magnificent track and field championships. It was only on the last day, of course, that Thomas, the president, announced that it was going to be a vacancy. And I think that's when I thought long and hard about it. And in simple terms, Gianni, I guess, and I think you would understand this because you watched my career develop from the mid-1970s, that this was a role. It's not a job, it's a passion. But this was a role that I felt that I'd been pretty much in training for most of my life, whether as an Olympic athlete, whether as the president of a National Olympic Committee, the president of a bid, the president of an organizing committee in London, and then, of course, the president of World Athletics. And along the way, a government minister, a member of parliament, and you know, somebody who'd been in sports marketing for 30 years. So I thought long and hard about it. And yes, I consulted my family. They're the most important people in my life. And I decided that I had the competence and I think the track record to sensibly offer my services. But of course, you know, the Democrat in me tells me that this is ultimately a judgment that the members will make and they should make. And that was my thinking. So yeah, I've lent very heavily on all the previous experiences that I've had in the sport, and I've served in pretty much every one of those stakeholders, including actually as a jobbing journalist for a time. I don't claim to be in such exalted company as in front of me, but I wrote for national newspapers. I've been a broadcaster as well. So first of all, I recognize how important the media is. Thank you for being here today. And as I regularly say to most organizations that I speak to that are talking about sponsorships and collaborative partnerships, that the most important sponsor any individual athlete will have, and certainly any organization will have over the life cycle of those organizations and those individuals, is the media. They are the most important vehicle for you to be able to impart your message and to drive your values. And that's why I'm so grateful that I'm given this opportunity today. And the media is a really important part of the next step of that journey. And I hope I'm in a position to ask you to join me on that journey.
Sure. I'm lucky that you for now you have decided not to run for the president of IPS, because as journalist you could do. If not, I would lose my place.
I don't claim to be in such exalted company, Gianni.
Listen, so now let's go to the problem of sport now. Problem that you have already faced as president of IAAF and World Athletics, no? The first one, you know, we were together in Berlin some years ago when happened the Semenya case. And now there is the problem of gender, transgender, and so on. What is it in this moment, your position?
My position is the position that I've always held.
Yes.
And I think delivered through World Athletics, that this is clearly a complex issue. And it's also a societal issue. We're not hermetically sealed in sport. We have to clearly understand the mores of the day and some of the cultural influences. I have influences ethnically from India and other parts of the world. So I don't see the world from the wrong end of a telescope in Europe. I have very much a global view. But the guiding principle for me is really simple, and it sits with the word integrity. The integrity of competition and the promotion and integrity of women's sport. And if you lose sight of that, and you don't have policies that are clear and unambiguous, then you are going to get into difficult and dangerous territory. So my position hasn't altered. We are very clear that we want women entering our sport, young girls entering our sport, to feel that there are no barriers to what they can do. And that is why the regulations that we have agreed around DSD and transgender are really important and non-negotiable.
This is very important because it's something that we will be discussing the world for a while, but it's important to have a direction, because without direction, we will never come out from this problem.
Look, if I may, Gianni, I think it is really important that we respect our stakeholders. And as a potential president of the International Olympic Committee, I want to work very much closer with the international federations. I want to work more closely with the National Olympic Committees. I want to work more closely with broadcasters and with media, but I also want to work very closely with the athletes. The athletes are an essential part of this journey, and each one of those stakeholders have their own interdependencies, and those interdependencies depend on clarity of thinking from the largest and most influential sporting organization in the world, which is the International Olympic Committee. We should be taking thought leadership positions and creating guidelines and principles for international federations and certainly NOCs. And that's what they've told me that they want. And I've served in every one of those capacities. So I know what those challenges are.
Okay. Let's go to the athlete now. The problem that next year there will be the Olympic Games, the political problem regarding the participation of some independent, so-called independent athletes. I think that is even always a hot situation, no? Because it's very difficult to find the right solution. But how you think that is possible to manage with this difficult problem?
Sorry, Gianni, you're talking about the
independent, yes,
the global circumstances.
Yes, for war and so on, because you know there are many wars around. Because even in Africa now there is a Congo, Rwanda, there is an incredible situation that we are facing. No?
Yeah, no, thank you for the clarification, Gianni. Look, let me start off from a slightly different focus. Nobody is going to sit here suggesting the world isn't complicated, but I think as a historian, if I may say so, I'm not sure there's any generation that hasn't been able to point at that moment to the complexity of the world they live in. You know, sport has been through the complexities of the Cold War. It has been through conflagrations. It has been through challenges, social and cultural. I'm not sure that this is any different. The principles absolutely remain the same, that you can only deal with what you have in front of you. And I'm not very good at responding to the observations, well, what about? What about? Yes, there are lots of what abouts because the world isn't perfect, but you have to deal clearly and concisely with what you have in front of you. And Gianni, if I may say so, this is not alien territory to me.
Yeah.
Back in 1979,
Yes.
when Britain was heading towards boycott of the Moscow Games, I fought probably the most powerful peacetime prime minister that Britain had created. And in simple terms, I went toe to toe. The British Olympic Association, that was then led by a very, very good chair, Sir Dennis Follows. And we went to the Olympic Games. It was slightly different. We didn't have national anthems. We didn't march in opening ceremonies, but we went. And this is not unusual for me. In the period that I've been president of World Athletics, I've had to deal with some significant issues. Just in the last few weeks, I've met 2 or 3 international leaders. That's not unusual for me either. So yes, the world is complex. I'm not sure it's any more complex than it's ever been. And I'm sure there are historians that would probably, I hope, support that nostrum. So you have to deal with what is in front of you, but you need to take people with you. You need to communicate, you need to engage, and yes, you need to communicate really liberally and clearly through our media partners.
Okay. After that, there is the other problem that you have faced in a very good manner is the problem of doping, no? You were very clear as IWF and World Athletics, what are the situation with doping, sometimes state doping and so on, and also the rest. Now there is a big discussion between WADA and USADA. Do you think that it's possible to find out a real solution, because we need a good anti-doping for the future?
Yes, of course there is. But if I may just cite a little bit of history, I was one of the first athletes with great honor to speak at an Olympic Congress. I was also asked in front of the Congress to synthesize the views of 38 individual competitors that went to the Congress in what was West Germany that year. I was given 4 minutes. Actually, I was given 2 minutes, but I said at the time, I can't possibly do that in 2 minutes. So actually, I was given 4 minutes. And for 2 minutes, 41 seconds of that, I talked about the dangers of insidious nature of doping, the lack of integrity, the demands that it placed both physically and mentally on competitors. And so I've been talking about this, not just talking, but delivering. I delivered the first out-of-competition testing system in the United Kingdom in the middle of the 1980s. So this is familiar territory. And of course, the Athletic Integrity Unit that was a part of the reforms that we drove through shortly after becoming president of the sport, the centerpiece of those reforms was the creation of the Athletic Integrity Unit, where we now have an independent unit. I think most people now consider it to be gold standard, and not just anti-doping, but also about integrity, because we concluded, sadly, from the experience our sport went through, that if you have challenges around doping, you probably have other issues of integrity in the sport as well. So for me, this is non-negotiable. You have to have free, fair, open competition. And you can't have athletes lining up in lane 4 worrying that there are a better set of doctors or chemists in lanes 3 or 5 around them. It has to be clear. And the purpose of a really well-structured anti-doping program is not just to weed the cheats out. It is actually to protect the birthright, the dedication, sometimes in decades, of those clean athletes, and those clean athletes that want to achieve what they achieve through the natural integrity in a sport. And that is really important for me. So this has to be an athlete-led process. And I think that's what the Athletic Integrity Unit has been so successful in achieving. It's given confidence back to competitors to believe that it doesn't matter where you are, or your reputation, or the size and scale of your National Olympic Committee or your member federation, you will be treated in exactly the same way. And the great advantage of that is that it is taken out of the hands of the federation, and some of the political connotations around it have also been mitigated.
Okay, very good. Now, there is your international federation, especially you in the last period, you have spoken that we have to have the asset, and you have spoken about prize money even in the Olympics. You put for your federation. Do you think that it ups to the federation to decide, or is the IOC?
No. Let me be really clear.
Yes.
The sports implementation of prize money was sport-wide. It went through our council, it went through our executive board, it went through our risk committees, it went through our athletes commission. We'd been talking about that for 2 years. And if I go back to my speech in Baden-Baden back in 1981, I also talked about the financial welfare of athletes. None of that was new. But there are direct and indirect ways that you can respond and support the athletes. Clearly, the headlines have been attracted around prize money, but that actually, in essence, is only a small part of what I talked about. And by the way, nobody should conclude that if I become president of the International Olympic Committee in 13 days' time, that is simply implemented because we did it in World Athletics. That is a much broader conversation. And I also recognize that this is not a one-size-fits-all. We did it for a very particular reason in athletics, and that was that many of our competitors have transferable skills, in fact, envious skills for many federations out there. They make good baseball players, they make good basketball players, they make good fast bowlers at cricket. In some parts of the world now, netball as well. So our athletes were in high demand, and we wanted to make sure that have always wanted to make sure we've created, where possible, the financial well-being for them, sometimes to maintain their presence in the sport, sometimes for another Olympic cycle, sometimes to give them a cushion when they retire, so they may have the ability to go back into higher education. Many athletes spend a decade or so after sometimes graduating. The skills that they accrue 10, 12 years earlier, you can understand as the world changes every 10 minutes. These are skills that need upskilling, updating. So it was really to give the athletes that third pillar of welfare that I talk about, alongside mental, which is critical, physical, of course, but actually financial welfare is part of the same picture for me. It's not a separate part of that. So that was really why we implemented that, but nobody should run away with the idea that that is something that I would automatically assume every international federation, every National Olympic Committee it's applicable. There is no one size fits all when you're talking about such complex issue. I know that from World Athletics. Yeah. Over 200 countries. I couldn't deliver what we've delivered in the sport on the assumption that Monaco knows best. The days of the command and control from the center have to be over. If they've been out of date for 30 years, we have to open the windows. There has to be oxygen, and we have to have collaborative discussions. And I would certainly encourage a discussion in that space. If you look at what the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee have just announced, which is, an insurance policy. So indirectly, there are lots of things we can do. We can share data with the athlete. We routinely share data with broadcasters and media and social media with our international federations, our NOCs. Why are we not sharing that data with athletes? It would allow them to understand who's watching them, where they're watching, you know, what is the age group, how are they engaging, what audiences, when they're being watched, or even Googling in the interval or the ad intervals. This is gold dust for an athlete. And this would allow them to create financial platforms, not just on the field of play, but away from the field of play. In 26 next year, for our World Ultimate Athletics Championships, we're going to be flying the top athletes, all the athletes, their social media teams to Budapest, so they can curate and create their own content and promote their own sponsorships. We have to really free up the equity of the brand for the athletes. And that's why I said in my presentation in Lausanne, it is so important. We don't just listen to the athletes, we share with them. And critically, we share their data, because they can do a lot with that to guarantee their own financial well-being.
Okay, now before to give only the question to the colleague, I want only to clarify to you that with the content creator, we must be careful, because it's something that can create some problem even to our profession. So I think that on this matter, we have to discuss a long time before, because everybody has the right to work and to work properly. The problem is to find the best solution for everybody, to respect the field of everybody, not to go outside the field.
And Gianni, I hope everything I've just said means that the media and broadcast sit in those discussions. They're not sitting outside those discussions.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's begin with the question. Jakub from Poland.
Good afternoon, Sebastian. Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon, Jakub.
I have one question, of course. Maybe today I am not objective, because I am a great fan of your work and your charisma. Now this is my question. The IOC is often perceived as rigid institution of touch with the modern realities. If elected you president, what your 3 key reforms would you implement to the modernize in the International Olympic Committee and make it more responsive to needs of athletes and fans?
Well, look, thank you for your question. I will try to synthesize that quite quickly. First of all, the International Olympic Committee is an extraordinary movement. I owe everything to that movement. I competed successfully at 2 Olympic Games, and I know that the Olympic Games was the platform that allowed me to be sitting here today talking to you as president of World Athletics, and hopefully the president of the International Olympic Committee. But we have to remember one critical factor, and that is that we are a sporting organization. Sport can shine a spotlight on so many other issues, right? Procurement, modern slavery, climate change, all those.
Sorry, Georgie, can you put off your microphone, because we discussed.
Wait a moment.
А что, няма снимка на съдията?
Georgie, microphone, please.
Yes, he has already muted.
Okay, so I think the first point I wanted to make, and I'll restate very quickly, we are a sporting organization. Sport, as I know, can shine a spotlight in extraordinary ways on human rights, on procurement patterns, on modern slavery, on climate change, and sport should have something to say about that. But that is not how we should be defining ourselves. We should be defining ourselves as a sporting organization that has the ability to transform the lives of young people through sport. So we need to remember the unique value that the Olympic movement brings to sport. We're a sporting organization. Secondly, the holy grail in any sporting organization, and believe me, I understand that. I understood that as an athlete. I understood it as a working journalist. I understood it as the president of World Athletics, as a National Olympic Committee president, as the bid chair in London and the organizing committee. The biggest challenge we all have is making sure that young people choose sport as a way of fashioning their future. I know that it is the most potent social worker in all our communities, the deftest diplomat when it is properly exercised by government, and the best policy that government will ever have in economic development, in social development, in health, and in education. That's the second point. The third point here is we need a membership that is empowered to help shape that journey. And I have concluded from my many discussions that there are talented members sitting around me, some of them far smarter than me, whose skill and experience is not being utilized properly. And the one thing I know that I'm very good at, and I don't think I could have delivered in the way that I've delivered across a range of activities, is the ability to build teams. I did it in London. I've done it at World Athletics off the back of some pretty horrendous times. Many of you were chronicling that and following it at the time. I worked in that kind of space as an athlete. You know, you crave criticism from your coaches. You're not afraid or hide away from people that disagree with you. That's part of life. And the one thing that I know is that I want strong, committed, vocal people around me who sometimes tell me I've got it wrong, as they do at World Athletics. And that is critical. So it's about sport first. It's about engaging with the next generation, because without them, we have nothing. It's about putting athletes at the heart of every decision we make, because without them, we have no sport. And finally, it is to make sure that we have a membership that is empowered and that we free their skills and abilities to help shape the direction that we want to come in.
Thank you very much for your answer, and good luck in the presidential of the IOC race.
Now,
Thank you.
Let's go with Belisa.
Hi, thank you very much for taking my questions. Lord Sebastian,
Belisa.
what would be your role in relation to issues of artificial intelligence at the Olympic Games, and what will be your development in terms of health integrated into sport and sustainability if you become president of IOC? Thank you.
Great question. And let me start from a slightly different point of view, if I may. I often do. I think we've got to stop talking about artificial intelligence as though it is somehow a voodoo science and a new science. It's not. My wonderful I'm Chancellor at Loughborough University, a big sports university. My wonderful Vice Chancellor, Professor Nick Jennings, wrote his doctorate dissertation in 1985 on artificial intelligence. So there is nothing new here. What we have got to be able to do is stop talking about it in the theory and practically implement it. And how can we do that? Well, first of all, you can revolutionize talent identification and in sport. And why is that important? Because it actually levels up the ability of smaller national Olympic committees, smaller international federations to be able to identify talent in a really smart, quick, and cost-effective way. The old-fashioned way of doing that was you put lots of boots on the ground, you analyze data in a rather old-fashioned way, and you then have no linked data, and you have missed opportunities. And it's a very subjective process. AI allows you to get into the field, to be able to benchmark best practice, to benchmark the skills that you are benchmarking other competitors against, and the ability to use performance metrics and physiological data that allows you to be really very much more specific, even an analysis of social media. So leveraging machine learning here is a huge opportunity, because it is the way that you can actually go into huge data, maximize and optimize your ability to actually identify that talent. And it allows particularly the smaller member federations to be able to do that. Secondly, there are efficiencies around event management. Look, we present at World Athletics 7 World Championships every 3 or 4 years, indoors, outdoors, cross country, road. We have already started using systems to allow us to present efficient management. And to pick up on your second point, Belisa, is actually it allows us to be very much more specific around what we can do to deliver what we call sustainable event management systems, which allow us to create sustainable projects. Look, I know from London how important that is. You know, we were in excess of every target that we set on sustainable building. We had tertiary, primary power. We used biomass. We had 800,000 tons of soil from toxic land that didn't go to landfill. It was actually cleaned. The toxins were cleaned by microbiology. So that was back in 2012. So it's really important. All the BREEAM standards in our construction are now considered to be benchmark standards. So it's we delivered a new city inside an old city in 7 years. And look, I'm biased. I think they are the most profound legacy games. A new community, 50,000 jobs, 3,500 socially affordable houses. We have new businesses, including actually Loughborough University there. We have one major bank that's now moving in there. This is a new city. And we could not have done that without using sustainable building standards. So, and again, AI can help you with that. And finally, one of the most important elements, we've already talked about anti-doping, but our ability to turbocharge our anti-doping systems. The Athletic Integrity Unit is working closely with Nice University on AI applications that don't just benchmark the effectiveness or the efficiencies internally in the organization. It allows us, again, through machine learning, to really and analyze mass data and focus on intelligence-led testing that can be very much more precise than what we're even doing now. So there are some really solid practical applications. This isn't theory, and we shouldn't be looking at this as a new science. We should be getting out there and implementing it quickly.
Okay, next, Wojciech.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Today, I'm happy that I've managed to get into the podium in this race for the question, although I believe Jakub might have been below a 0.1 reaction. But to the point, you've mentioned today the Baden-Baden Congress a few times, and Gianni was asking you the questions about the most crucial challenges of the entire Olympic movement, and it appeared you've dealt with, well, maybe not all of them, but most of them within the World Athletics, with the DSD and transgender, with the doping system, and with the athletes from, let's say, a certain country, first with the doping scandal, then with the war. Today we have the biggest break since 43 years, between 1930 and 1973, with the break between the Olympic Congresses. The last one was in 2009 in Copenhagen, so it's now 16 years, not 43. But all those challenges, as we see on the example of World Athletics, are rising from many years, and there has been no Congress. Do you believe that, as the potential IOC president, the Olympic Congress is the way to resolve that in the other disciplines and in the entire Olympic movement?
I think what the Olympic movement needs to do is to meet more often, create more space for debate, more safe space for debate. Alternate analysis is not something you shy away from. It is something you embrace, and that is important. And I like to think if you spoke to any of my board members at World Athletics, they will tell you that has always been my approach. And we have to meet more often. We can't have a room of highly talented people that are frankly sitting there rubber stamping policies that are created elsewhere and nudging them through in a way that doesn't allow for proper analysis. And my view is that in enabling the members to do that, you have to create structures. And this is about people as well. You know, we need to meet more often. We need to have more space. We need to work more closely, more collaboratively with our national Olympic committees and our international federations. And I know how important those stakeholders are because I've been the president in both those spaces. So we need to bring people together, but we need to give more space for debate. And one of the things I'm really open about is that if I do get across the line in a couple of weeks' time, the first thing I will do is I will set a date in our calendars while we're all there and take the membership away for 3 or 4 days where, to mix my metaphors, we will simply put our foot on the ball and figure out what it is we want to achieve in the next 10 years, how we're going to do it, and how do we define ourselves. And this has to be a member-led organization. And in a good organization, you have co-curation. You have co-curation from members, and you have co-curation from really talented world-class executives. And I know I've got that at World Athletics. So that for me is a very simple nostrum. We need to make sure that we have the people in the right places and in the right ability to be able to shape the future of the movement.
Seb, I have to ask you one
Thank you.
thing. Before, I've been told that you can share with us only 1 hour because there are a lot of questions. We can go over 1 hour, or your marathon is finishing after 1 hour. Half marathon or marathon?
Well, you can imagine, Gianni.
I know.
I would love to stay on the phone. I would love to stay on this call all day because so many of you are good and trusted friends of mine. But I am at a European indoor championships, and I do have a young leaders. I have a young leaders session that I'm speaking to in a few moments. I've done that every year effectively since 2014. I don't want to let them down. So I'm afraid I am sadly going to stick to the timetable.
Okay, so if the colleague accept, I would like to go from one continent to another to give the importance also of this situation. Okay, Ralph, very quickly, and after I go for the continent.
Oh, okay, I tried. Thank you to be here. What do you think of the process, how the Olympic Games were awarded recently? I want to briefly describe my problems. Firstly, it's the process in general, and secondly, the games were awarded to cities that made false promises about the venues. Los Angeles has no regular rowing course. The course for 2028 competition will now be shortened from 2,000 meters to 2,500 meters, a completely different competition. Los Angeles has no canoe slalom course. Competition will now be held 2,000 kilometers away, so far from Berlin, like to Istanbul. Los Angeles wanted to have cricket in its program, but now they have no cricket stadium and goes to New York. What is your opinion on this? And if you become president, how do you intend to award the Olympic Games in the future?
Well, I think there are two questions you're really asking. The first is, and I'm not going to get into the details of Los Angeles. I'm not on the coordination commission. I know where we are in athletics. You'd be shocked if I didn't tell you I knew where we were in athletics. But look, I think there is a very important principle here. And I know this from having chaired and successfully won the ability to stage an Olympic and Paralympic Games. The host city contract is a fairly serious document. And it is really important that where possible, there are inevitable changes because from a bid through to implementation, there are things that you can't possibly know in a bid that you have to respond to quite quickly. And yes, sometimes there are changes, minor, modest changes to the master plan. That's understandable. But I think the guiding principle here has to be that the host city contract is not an a la carte menu. It has to be policed and it has to be secured on both sides of the fence, both through the local organizing committee and the International Olympic Committee. The second question you ask is about how games are being awarded. And I can absolutely understand the need to have intellectual forensic analysis around a city and its ability to deliver. Believe me, I know of all the people that you've probably spoken to in the last week or so, I know the complexity of delivering an Olympic Games. I took 7 years of my life and those of my great teams around me doing that. There is nothing that challenges a city in peacetime more than the delivery of an Olympic Games. It is of inordinate complexity. But there has to be a human face to this as well. And yes, of course, have the evaluation, of course, know that you have the operational ability and the guarantees and the government support. All those things are absolute essentials. But it is really important. I guess I come back again to the empowerment of the membership. The membership have to be across these decisions. There has to be the chemistry of people mixing in cities and understanding what those cities have to offer. This cannot just be a desktop analysis. And while I welcome evaluation, we went through the strictest evaluation in London, of course we did, and we prevailed amongst 4 other very, very powerful bids. But you have to have members just sensing what the event is about and what that city has to offer. And that's the human connectivity. And that's what I will always encourage.
Okay, let's go to Wakako, Japan.
Hello, Seb.
Hi,
Nice to
Wakako.
talk to you again. Hi.
Thank you.
I was just far away. For the last 10 years, as a athletics president, you have tasked, your key task was to re-establish trust and inspiring aspect quality of your sport. Now, you tasked yourself with a new challenge, being IOC president. Does it mean that after going through your manifesto, or it seems to me that you were suggesting today's Olympic movement and Olympic Games may not performing to its best quality or level, scratch. What are the things that you could do if you become vice president to restore great stage, as you put it, representing humanity's highest ideals to the real celebration?
Wakako, let me be really clear. The Olympic movement is not broken. It is an extraordinary movement, and it still provides the most extraordinary, indelible memories for people in their lives. The Olympic movement is here to stay. But look, I'm an athlete. Every morning as a competitor, I woke up trying to figure out how I can be better tomorrow than I am today, how I can be better in a month's time than I am today. And yes, I craved criticism. I had coaches around me that were prepared to give me unvarnished, unchallenged views, and we all moved in the same direction. So as president of World Athletics, as president of the National Olympic Committee, as a minister, as a member of parliament, of course, I want the organization that I'm working in to always want to be better. And I think that is, for me, that is simply the watch. I retired from the sport when I concluded that I could not run any faster than I'd previously run. I don't think about any organization I've worked in that way. When I came to World Athletics, I knew we could be a better organization, and we are. And all I'm really saying is that I would take that same ambition into the Olympic headquarters in Lausanne and work with people to be as good as we possibly can, and to build teams that allow those teams to deliver the best work of their lives on behalf of the athletes. I want everybody waking up every morning in that organization understanding they are there for one reason, and that is the delivery of opportunities for the athletes. And I will go to my grave knowing that is the only way you can sit there as an administrator and figure out what the future is. So yes, there are challenges we've talked about. There are geopolitical challenges. I don't think they're any greater or any more profound than generations before have dealt with. We have commercial challenges. The commercial model is out of date. I know that. It changed. It's not changing, it changed. I've been in the sports marketing business for the last 30 years. At the moment, we have transactional sponsorships. They have to become collaborative partnerships. We need to bring the commercial partners to the table, and we need to create brands that want to be there and are able to activate in marketplaces in many of your countries, in markets that will really help create new opportunities. Yes, again, for the athletes. So all these things I want to be in the vanguard of, but I want teams to travel with me, and I want to create and bring the right people to the table to help us do that. It's so simple for me.
Thank you.
I'm hoping I haven't reduced you all to silence.
Jenny, you are muted.
Sorry, now we go to Australia. Tracy.
Thanks, Gianni. Hi, Seb. A quick question, because you have been such a strong advocate for women, there's a group of female swimmers from 1980 who've been advocating for the IOC to redress medals they missed out on because of doped swimmers from East Germany. Do you know why the IOC hasn't done that yet? And is that something you would look at doing if you were the president?
Well, the reason the IOC hasn't done it, in fairness, is that it is actually quite complicated legally. And we looked at that, actually with my colleagues and partners in European athletics. You may remember, Tracy, 4 or 5 years ago, they looked at removing some of the dubious records from the books. And it presented some massive, massive legal challenges. The ability to implement that without the legal or the background to be able to actually implement that. What I do think we need to recognize is that in a way there have been two dual systems. Look, you know, I came through the 1970s, the 1980s. If I'm being blunt, it was a free-for-all. The systems that were in place were sketchy at best. I actually was the architect of the first out-of-competition testing system in the United Kingdom when I was deputy chair of the UK Sports Council back then. So I think there are things that we can look at. There are things that we can do. There are recognitions, but it is extremely difficult to go back 30, 40, 50 years. Let me make a broader point here, and I guess it's a historic one. I also understand from that time that many of those athletes that were in that system had little or no say or control over their circumstances. I have marginally more sympathy for athletes that were in that coercive system than athletes from liberal democracies that actually make a decision that is freely made. So the one thing that the Athletic Integrity Unit has done is it has cut through much of this, and that is important. But I can't tell you that that is a particularly easy road to take. My private views are very much in sympathy with those that did lose medals or championships or titles to athletes that were doped in at industrial scale levels. That's why we were so tough in the early days of my presidency in putting systems in place that really gave the athletes the flexibility and the freedom to compete with integrity.
Thanks.
Okay, now we go to Africa. James Mwamba, Kenya.
Thank you so much. Seb, greetings from Nairobi, and thanks for the good work. Congratulations on the good work you're doing at World Athletics. I want to take you back to.
I'm only smiling, James, because I was in Nairobi 2 days ago. So
Yes, good to talk to you again, Seb.
Thank
good
you.
to see you. And so I want to mention something related to the Olympic movement. We know that in Los Angeles 2028 Olympics, boxing might not be, it's not going to be part of the program because of, again, those problems with the international federations, the International Boxing Association. There's been a bit of a problem with the IOC, and so that is likely to deny athletes opportunities to realize their Olympic dreams, some of which they've been working on for a very long time. I would like to know what your plans are about this, should you ascend to the head of the IOC. Thank you.
Well, it's very simple for me. I was on the British Boxing Board of Control for 6 years. Boxing is a sport that I really understand and appreciate. Boxing is a very important Olympic sport. So we absolutely have to make sure that that sport is present in Olympic Games for, you know, as many years as we can maintain that. That the sport has to be delivered in a way that it fulfills all the demands of integrity. And the guiding principle, of course, for me is that an international federation should be the guardians of that sport. They should be the organizations delivering it. So I recognize that this is a complicated landscape, but I think those for me are the guiding principles. But boxing, boxing is a sport that has provided, you know, Muhammad Ali as an Olympic gold medalist, George Foreman, you know, extraordinary boxers who have gone on to distinguish themselves as professionals. It is very important that we resolve that, and we resolve it quickly.
Seb, you have time for another 2 questions, or is over?
I'm afraid I'm afraid, Gianni, I have a room full of young leaders here who I want to hear from, and I don't want to leave them waiting.
Okay, so I have to say, I'm sorry for the colleague that has tried to book their question, but we appreciate that Seb has had the time to stay with us today, because I know that his schedule is very busy. And I remind him that at the 7th of April of 45 years ago has begun the big dream, no? So we have to toast about them, and it's a secret this between us, no?
I will leave you to explain to your friends, my friends, Gianni, the significance of 45 years.
45 years ago, yes. Okay, guys, so thank you very much, Seb. So see you. In one sense, if you are president of the IOC, unfortunately, our Congress is from the 13th to the 17th of May. That is the same date of the ANOC meeting, you know? But in the case you are still the top guy of athletics, you are always welcome to our Congress to speak about the next program of athletics that is very important for us, okay?
Well,
anyway,
Gianni, whatever role I have after March,
sure.
rest assured that I hope that you all continue to make the journey with us.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye, guys.
Thank you.